welcome back to the rationalinvestor.com Broiler Chicken Show. Trade your trading plans, don't take too much risk on any one trade, and just let yourself get rich. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the rationalinvestor.com's Broiler Chicken Show. Bark, 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 bark. Hope you're all having an enjoyable weekend. Very tumultuous times we live in here. And now you can really see Big Brother cracking down on social media. So fascinating to see the evolution of, I suppose, and if anything, I think this kind of is like sort of the way industry goes is a new technology comes out and people just go absolutely crazy, run with the ball in 20 different directions. And governments move slow as icebergs, but slowly over time, they step in and exert their control. Actually interesting that the current sort of power base right now is attacking classic media channels. And actually, I think clearly demonstrating how we don't really live in a free speech world anymore, which is kind of sad. Having said that, it's tough times like this, actually, where emotions are extremely high and you can get pretty radical things that can come out of these situations. In fact, quite often to affect change, you mysteriously find out that crises are created to cause the public to act emotional. And I have a funny feeling there is some of that. Also interesting too, you noticed we don't seem to be talking about Mr. Epstein anymore. Oh, cool. That's a convenient distraction. And now, of course, the mega base, they've completely forgotten about all that as they're wrapped up in their mourning right now. You can't write better fiction than reality, folks. I've told you that a dozen times. For whatever it's worth. My advice to all of you out there is be careful. Be careful the words that you use. For God's sakes, do not openly insult the powers that be. You are asking for trouble. I'm probably even talking to myself to a certain degree. And I suppose, the sad part about it, like in my country, this guy here, because these Western nations are in such horrific financial shape, they just keep pounding the table. This is a crisis. This is a crisis. And the sad part about it is once we actually get into an actual crisis, is this kind of like the boy calling wolf? I would say that how do you say this? We all know, right? The 1%, Great Reset, Klaus and all his buddies. I mean, we all, interesting enough, people who watch this channel or are fans of mine, we all know what the real story is. We know what's really going on. It's fascinating to watch how shiny objects dangled this direction, that direction, and emotional triggers can get the human species to completely I don't even know what the word is. Just, they're just blinded and they don't even really see reality. And clowns like me, try and explain the reality of the financial situation, and the public just glazes right over. Boring. They'll only be concerned, of course, when they see the prices at the grocery store go through the roof. Then they're like, oh, what's going on here? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's just nobody really wants to accept reality. It's kind of a shame. And also, too, if you are a longtime follower of me, then the money masters, and how that really should be required watching, reading from all people that work with me, just so you have a clear understanding of what's really going on here in our society. Yeah. So, also too, these we haven't talked about it in a bit, but the Jupiter Saturn conjunct with Pluto crossing, six different celestial events all happening in this decade, all basically the big stopwatch in the sky is saying, all right, society, enough of that society. Now you got to figure out what your new society is going to look like. And it's not always for the better. That's the worst part about all this. Poor old Russians. At least under the Tsar, you kind of had sort of ability to get ahead. And ironically enough, the Russians, the Tsar, half of the reason why the communist revolution happened was because the Tsar would not allow the central banks to come in and take over Russia's financial system. So what do the central banks do? They go and basically engineer World War One. Yeah, we'll show you, and the communist revolution, all that. But man, the poor Russians, they lived under the yoke of just the commie czars. uh, Showed a little bit of glimmer of freedom, and then their secret police guy comes in and says, sorry, no more freedom for you, and just shuts their society down. And there's not a damn thing a typical Russian person can do about it. Suppose same thing in good old communist China. Man, you got to feel badly for a typical Chinese person. What a existence. And the leaders openly laughing about how they're harvesting people's organs so that they could live forever. Wow. Certain portion of the Muslim religion does believe that this is hell, and we have to somehow earn our way out of it. God, the more I live, the more I think that they're probably right. Don't even want to touch those idiots or you could get unalived very quickly. Good. Yeah. Anyway, it's tough times for this species, and we're in this inflection point, where all this comes to a head. So I hope you're enjoying the ride. If nothing else, at least when I get over to the other side, I can say, well, you sent me there through one of these crazy ass great resets. It was a very interesting experience to go through it all. I hope my death is relatively painless, but who knows? That's what the future's got in store for us. Won't know that now. While I tromp on my stogie. Oh goodness, what a crazy time to be alive. I will say there were plenty of sort of earmarks. I don't know what do you even call them, signposts, if you will, that the way that things have developed is pretty much on course. Little concerning about how the public definitely seems to be getting more and more into crypto, and even started seeing some over the top bullishness within the crypto Twitter space, which you don't often blatantly see. And if anything, if those people are starting to get too bullish, then you better cool your enthusiasm. And I noticed that on Solana and Jupiter in particular, charts were setting up really prettily. Then the public all just went absolutely apeshit bullish. And you go on crypto Twitter and they're all like, send it, right? And what does the damn thing do? It stalls out. I think, if nothing else, I think we all should acknowledge that this bear is we haven't hit the cycle peak yet. So we are in basically the final stages of whatever this bull market was supposed to look like. I can imagine a lot of people in altcoin land and crypto enthusiasts in that space are pretty disappointed. I can completely understand. But unfortunately, there's just no guarantees in this business, just none whatsoever. In fact, the 2006 bull market that was engineered by the Junior Bush administration, and I might argue that maybe it was Clinton, but that was the pivot from sort of that old world into this new world, where governments and people who are in power in government at that particular time, they just seem to run completely roughshod over public's best interest. I don't know. I mean, maybe it started decades earlier. Who knows? But I think we have to acknowledge that we've been in quite a long bull run here. And at some point, that bull's got to take a bit of a pause. I do hear a lot of people in the marketplace talking about liquidity. And actually, one of TRI's principals, Julian, he was a fan of this study, and I never really took the time to sort of break it apart and really dissect all the pieces. Where's the best way to show you this? I guess that's this image. When even old timers, when somebody gives me this symbol, oh, this will tell you the roadmap for the future. WRESBAL minus bracket WTREGEN plus RRPONTSYD bracket. What the hell is this? Is this a futures contract? So, and actually, just out of curiosity, I've just been sort of watching this of late, and I don't really think, along with everything, when it comes to economics, it's all really about market structure. W's are bullish, M's are bearish. Pretty straightforward stuff. Don't overthink this. And the market often likes to revert to the mean. In fact, that was the very first trading sort of setup I was ever taught by a guy who used to be a pit trader and commodities broker back in the 1980s, when we used to get our price charts in the mail. When plotting on a daily price chart, a big old fat M comes in, well, it's pretty obvious that that's bearish. And if the market is a million miles away from the 50% rule, and actually in previous Broiler Chicken shows, I think I explained to you step by step how anybody can calculate the 50% rule on the fly. Just give you sort of a nice, simple, keep you honest number to work with. The good part about using the 50% rule as the target is that that's just the mean. All it is the market returning to normal. You could use like a long-term moving average, like a 200 period moving average often lines up nicely with the 50% rule, sort of average price over the past year. Sometimes, if you force yourself to take partial profits at the 50% rule and then maybe just put your stop at scratch on the remaining. Sometimes, and this is probably a good example here on this big move up in this blue line, M's start coming in. Well, reversion to the means probably somewhere in here. So you take your partial profits at 50% rule, put your stop at scratch on the runner, and the market goes just ridiculously further than anybody ever expected. So that's the great part about this particular approach to the market. And we're doing it off of Federal Reserve liquidity data. It's the irony of it all is that, and one thing I absolutely love doing, just to drive them crazy, is you talk to like a fundamentalist. Oh, I only trade PE ratios. I only trade price to book. I only trade EBITDA or whatever. And you apply technical analysis to their data sets, and it's like, oh, what a surprise. W's are bullish, M's are bearish. Well, what a rocket science. So, and this is where things like Buffett's value of the stock market relative to the GDP. Are we at a bit of an extreme right now? Should we expect 50% retracements? Those kind of things. It's just, you know what it is? It's just TA 101. Don't overthink this stuff. Keep it as simple as possible. In fact, actually, this Intel trade is a really good example of this. Where all I did was I just looked at this chart and went, gee whiz, there was the price back in 2020. Here's the price now. Is it reasonable to expect a 50% retracement of this price? I mean, this isn't rocket science. That's the funniest part about this, right? So probably we expect the stock to come back to 40 some odd dollars. And really, you shouldn't be overly excited about something like that happen. It's nature. It's just, I don't know how you describe it. It's the way the universe is built. So, tacos, whatever the hell you want to call that doofus, comes out and is all excited about how he's got the stock to pump from $20 to $30. Well, the irony of it all is, I'll be taking profits on mine, add double, sell half on a double, establish a risk-free trade. But this isn't anything to be really boastful about. And only halfway to the target, that's not something to get excited about. That's sort of like, yeah, so what? And if anything, the fact that Taco, and keep in mind, he's notorious for being a horrible stock trader. And his sons has obviously inherited the bug of being a horrible stock picker or crypto picker or whatever the hell you want to call it. Unless, of course, they can blatantly and openly manipulate the price. That's the only way that they can make money in the market. Remember that nonsense with Regeneron through the whole sickness and how he was touting the stock? That's the typical stock trader Taco is. But anyway, the point being, on this particular chart, all of you should see these W's. You should see the 50% rule, and this isn't rocket science. It's actually pretty straightforward stuff. It's fascinating how, we've actually done this before. There's some W's. There's the 50% rule. You wouldn't quite have gotten your double off on that, but it's not a bad trade. But nothing to be like, oh my God, look how brilliant I am. Man, this is just business as usual. And the interesting thing with this company, and the reason why I really like it so much, is just simply because, there is the dot-com boom peak. And probably none of you remember this crazy ass bull market, but I was a broker through this and we rode the whole damn way up. And then, of course, it completely fell apart. And it's fascinating how this guy, you could make the argument, and it's funny how people do this, but you could make the argument you can step in and buy this company at the same valuations it was in the 1990s. Like, there has been no bull market here whatsoever for 25 years. That's quite remarkable, really, considering how big this company is. And really, all I'm looking for is just technically appropriate price behavior. So I remember I did, well, anyway, I think you get the idea. So I don't think there's anything really to boast about here. Just simply draw your weekly W's and your 50% rules. And if you can somehow sneak in where a 50% retracement actually spits out a double of a pretty respectable trading range, well, it's probably a trade worth considering. And also, too, you get confluence, things like Fuggenbaum, chaos theory, aligning. I don't think there's nothing really shocking going on here. It's just business as usual in the market. And it's the same logic with Bitcoin. I mean, it's all the same. It's, and, like Brian's in there banging out doubles and all that kind of crazy talk. But really, all it is me forcing myself to come in at the bottom ends of our ranges. The great part about it in Bitcoin is actually we get a nice little 4-year cycle reset every 4 years. So that's the same sort of logic. This is a log scale, so you don't quite see it the same. If I change it to regular, you'll see that. All right. Whoa, where the hell did all the lines go? But, it's the same logic. Don't chase, come in at the bottom ends of ranges, start accumulating. Same logic here. Try not to chase, try to force yourself to come in at the bottom ends of ranges. Look for 50% retracements. Just rinse and repeat. Same old, same old. The problem, of course, with that narrative is this a good place to come in and be a buyer? I don't know. That's a tough one. It's interesting heading over to places like Trading Views chat room, and I popped in there, and lots of people going on about, oh my God, we go straight up to $500,000 from here. And it's like, oh, that's not the kind of talk you want to hear. So that's a bit bothersome. Probably this is the best image I have for sort of what I think current market state is. And we're getting awfully long in the tooth with our cycles. Theoretically, according to my sort of thinking, and I might be completely alone on this. And if anything, I hope I am. But I think we're heading into the window where the market can go crazy. It does have permission to go crazy. I think the backdrop right now of the broader market sentiment, keep in mind the broader market is pretty euphoric right now. There's silly Intel as one example. But if we look at, things like the ultimate leading indicator in the stock market, the semiconductors, they're obviously happy with what Nvidia is doing of late. Also, too, it's interesting to watch Micron. A lot of people don't really follow Micron, but I have for years, and he's done very, very well of late. Also interesting to see the semiconductor parts manufacturers that I was concerned about, especially Seward's ASML, really going for it here. And I suppose, where's stock market sheets? I guess that would be here. Bond markets, doesn't feel like interest rates are in like the center of the conversation anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if all of this range. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if we actually have a really, really big couple down days here, because the whole world just turned uber bond bullish there on that pump up on that employment number, maybe a little too bullish. So we're probably going to see this back up here a bit here, but I don't think interest rates are really the focus of the market's conversation right now, especially the long end. I mean, you can just see all of these. They're all pressing. And until we get some sort of catalyst or something that will define some sort of reversal, and I wouldn't go into the business of predicting what that catalyst will be. I don't see a hell of a lot standing in the way of this bull. But the sad part about it is there's no way in hell I can come in on the buy side and buy these kind of markets. That's crazy talk. You crazy? You're just crazy. So, the writing's on the walls. Also, too, I thought it was interesting. January barometers. We are now into some sort of window where the market, the traders back at the beginning of the year, I have a feeling they were wondering how the U.S. fiscal year end was going to go. And interesting enough, I even quizzed a lot of people in recent videos and social media posts. Why does the market act the way that it does through September in a very normal fashion? And the answer is actually because of the U.S. fiscal year end, and especially with who tinkering the books. I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be some creative accounting through this fiscal year end. So, and probably also too with tariffs and stuff like that. I don't know whether they will be appropriately accounted for into the fiscal year end, or do they get accounted for next year's budget, next year's balance sheet. I don't know, but any way you shake it, the traders back at the beginning of the year, this study basically is produced right in here. They were expecting that the latter part of this year is going to be a bit of a challenge. So be prepared, folks. Something's brewing. And the worst part about all of this is, us as Joe Sixpacks in the market. We operate off of the known fundamentals, what's sort of out there in the public, but clearly, especially in this world, the public is being kept in the dark about a lot of what's going on in this world. And then also too, when the public sort of gets close to maybe getting some answers, as I said, convenient how Mr. Epstein seems to have fallen off the radar screen, even though Mr. Trump's supporters were ready to lynch him over his betrayal of them just a month or so ago. Now, none of them are talking about that at all. So, you have to be careful. And I would even say that whatever scandal that it is that's going to derail this bull eventually, it is happening now as we speak, which really sucks. But it is what it is. So we have to understand that there are definitely things going on in the background that we just simply aren't privy to. And this is half the reason why I say things like, the most important. I mean, what is your number one job? So just don't put yourself into a position where you can get blindsided. And coming in and loading up on crypto up top here, which the public is probably going to do, they're kind of setting themselves up to get blindsided, I think. It's just a bit sad. And I think the writing on the walls is starting to show itself. And that was sort of the whole point of this particular week's market of note. Is you can clearly see what happened when we got this triple top, like an M within an M and a whole bunch of little M's here before. It's fascinating how that basically corresponded with the Bitcoin cycle peak. I think the construction and the management of this thing called Bitcoin goes way, way deeper than what the crypto community even understands. And I personally think it was actually created by things like the NSA. But anyway, that's here nor there. The point being that, we all know our 4-year cycles, right? Where's that pretty picture? I guess that was back here. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. And if anything, this image is a perfect, it's nice and clear, crisp, no bullshit. This is basically this same cycle. And these are fib time cycles. And I did find it fascinating. W.D. Gann, he believes that time and price are actually completely connected. So I did find it fascinating that when students of mine over the years started connecting my love affair with 38.2, my love affair with good old mountains 1.618, my love affair with 786, and started to play connect the dots with this Bitcoin thing and its 4-year cycles. I gotta say, man, that's a pretty damn compelling image. Also, too, I think this image does speak quite loudly to the evolution of this particular asset. In that, the very early days, the growth rate was absolutely insane. And anybody, of course, who was an early adopter and all that kind of fun stuff, the percentage returns were just astronomical. I wonder if we can even put percent on here. There you go. 9,000% from there to there on that 150 bar study. It's about right, somewhere around there. If we move to the next cycle, percentage moves. I'll put that over there so it fits on the screen. Oh, there we go. Very healthy percentage returns, don't get me wrong, but you can clearly see the deprecation. I'm not quite sure what the word is. Here we did like 10,000%. Here we did 3,000%. So that's like maybe 1/3 the growth. Be interesting if this cycle we only did 1,000%. Oh, look at that. Interesting. Try and get this to sort of line up. Stretch this out. Oh, there we go. Anyway, so even a little bit under 1,000%. So this particular cycle and the age of this asset, I think I understand what's going on here. So now we're only 80%. And one might, I suppose, argue if this was 1,000, we should do, I guess, well, actually, that makes sense, eh? So 10,000 to 3,000 to 1,000, didn't even get there. Does this go, what would that be? 300% maybe would be that same sort of ratio. So if that's the case, then this thing's still got some room to run up. Might even double, maybe even triple from these levels. That actually would not be crazy talk as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how I can adjust this. It would be interesting to see exactly what price point. 1/3, right? So 10,000, 1/3, 3,000. Not quite 1/3, eh? That was like 1/5, I guess, that size. So somewhere in there between 1/3 and 1/5 of whatever this size move was. Actually, interesting if it's 1/5, then just about 100% there would be 1/5, eh? So I do like the idea that there is going to be some sort of blow off top. And what worries me, of course, and I've been in this space forever now, and also too, venture cap stocks. I mean, hell, I was a penny stockbroker through the .com boom and all those bulletin board stocks they used to do. A lot of crypto is very, very similar to like the pink sheets now. Not a hell of a lot of difference. And the old adage there, right, is if you want to take the market down, actually, this might be a good question for all of you just to see if you're sort of paying attention. If you want to take the market down, what do you first do? Oh, look at that. Nobody watching. Fascinating. 37 people. If anything, that's an interesting commentary on usually at the top of these markets, these things are really just going crazy. Social media. Yeah. That's right, TBG. And actually, TBG's turned into quite a disciple. I think TBG, if I ever do get that place in Europe, you're going to have to be walking right behind me in your white robes too. I remember when we went to Portugal, TBG's like, I could totally see you walking, floating around here in your robes and all your disciples around you. I tell you, I think TBG, you're going to be... I think you in a weird sort of way, you might be like Paul. I don't think you'll be a Peter, but I think you'll be a Paul. And actually, that would be nice because the one thing that would actually cement this, nobody over on YouTube wants to answer me. Gee whiz, come on. Oh, there you go. Somebody answered. Jesse, very good. Oh, there you go. Arborea Crypto says, blow the lid off it first. There you go. Get everyone bullish. All right. So good. Some of you at least understand the way this silly game works, right? Wall Street, it never does anything small, right? And, big fat cats smoking their stogies and the whole damn thing, right? I mean, they deal in like, millions or hundreds of millions, billions, right? So how the hell are they going to sell a billion whatevers if there's nobody interested? I mean, the only way they get filled in size to the tune of, millions, billions, trillions, whatever the fuck number you want to use. Just follow the M2 money supply. Oh boy. The only way they can get filled in size is they have to get the public coming in and circle jerking and just convinced that we're going to the moon. And of course, the byproduct of that kind of mind, what's the expression you should use? Brain. It's not really brainwashing, but it's, I hate to say it, but actually, I think there was evidence of it in this whole recent killing of this conservative influencer. Let's try and avoid any direct references on these YouTube videos. In that, I actually tweeted out a video that I thought it was interesting. This guy was a behavioralist, and he just interprets people's body language and their behavior. And I got to say, he walked through step by step by step. And I used to do this even as a financial planner, because you kind of had to kind of figure out whether people were lying to you about their financial circumstances. And then sadly, when it comes to financial planning and money and all that, a lot of times hubby or wifey, whoever's got the money, will often conveniently fib about situations so that spouses don't know, which is pretty sad commentary on these silly humans. But anyway, the point being that body language and sort of baseline body language can tell you a lot about what people are thinking and feeling inside through an experience. So there's one gentleman did, and actually he revealed that it turns out that one of these major media outlets actually altered the video that's been presented to the public as the truth, actually altered the video so that this person's body language and anybody, the interesting thing with body language is that quite often they're like social cues. So if somebody gives off a certain body language, if I go, right, a lot of you, all 50 of you, are like, holy fuck, what the hell what just happened? What's going through this guy's brain? Or if I'm like, oh, you're so sweet and so loving, and oh, hugs and kisses, that kind of stuff. Well, that elicits another emotional response out of you, the viewer. And I actually think that the public is being intentionally deceived here by this one particular media outlet. Are they an agent of some, this is where we go down the rabbit hole. How deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go? And remember, I said known fundamentals versus fundamentals. There's a lot of very suspicious things going on here. And also, too, this reminds me of through the health crisis and how, the whoever these Illuminati are, they actually hired some guy to walk up and down the highways of Western Washington with a flamethrower. And actually, he was lighting fires up and down the freeway, and nobody said boo about it. And at the time, of course, it was politically favorable to talk about the changing climate and how wildfires are completely out of control. And oh, what an interesting narrative. You drive down the highway and there's flames. It just fits so nicely. And yet, following the event, nobody ever did any follow up. Nobody ever talked about the person being arrested for basically blatant arson. And it just disappeared. And tragically, I do believe that this gentleman, there is far, far more to this story than what we're being told in the public. And we probably will never know. And kind of like Jack Ruby, I have a sneaky suspicion that this gentleman will never see a trial. And if he's mysteriously unalived, then the whole thing just vanishes in the background. Oh yeah, those Muslims and this stuff about this place being hell, it's resonating with me more and more on a daily basis. So anyway, happy, happy, joy, joy. So, this image, if nothing else, it should drive home to you that we are very, very late in this cycle. Very late. I also think too, and it's kind of a derivative of it, that you can clearly see the depreciating. I don't know if that's the right word. Lessening of the insane face rips as we go through cycle by cycle by cycle. So, am I looking for this kind of growth in the crypto space and even this particular asset moving forward over time? No. In fact, I might even argue that actually this asset did exactly what its original intended purpose was, and that it basically created a way for the 1% to avoid the great resetting. I think that's probably the best way to describe this. Also, too, what I've noticed in this space is that, and I think it's conveniently politically convenient. I'm not quite sure how to say that. Did notice though that the things like the climate crisis, well, that kind of rhetoric seems to actually have been removed from my dearly beloved government's vocabulary of late, and actually their priorities. Not a single mention of climate crises now. So I found it fascinating through this past 5 years how the original intention of this cryptocurrency space, which I absolutely loved, was this idea that these assets had intrinsic value. This concept of proof of work. I might argue now, and interestingly enough, on social media recently, there were a lot of mentions about how Gensler went on CNBC recently and he was absolutely destroyed by the anchors. And unfortunately, I think that's just biased by people in social media who want crypto to do well here. And obviously they are bag holders and they want their assets to go up. So we don't want to hear anything negative about crypto. And yet, when I actually watched the interview with Gensler, he's basically telling you the exact same thing I'm trying to tell you right now. Although the public doesn't want to hear it. This is the last thing in the world somebody who just bought wants to hear. These quote unquote tokens are basically worthless. There's a statement. Boom. We had 43 viewers. Now we've got 6. I mean, I love the idea of proof of work as a immutable blockchain, a validation of value. And is there any value in your society of having a trustworthy ledger that can't be cooked, that can't be fixed. I mean, you all seen what the prices at your grocery store have done of late. Well, that's purely a function of how the governments around the world cook the books, and they alter the things that you use as currency to achieve their desired objectives. And the sad part about it is, of course, you learn the concept of the money masters, what they're trying to, what Mr. Stills there is trying to convey. Ben Stills, I think that's his name. Fantastic piece. That's probably one of the best truthers, if you will, that I have seen in my entire life. The only other video actually that holds a candle to that documentary, in my eyes, is the documentary about the Great Year. And if any of you know what that is, then actually what you understand is that actually we silly humans on this planet have been going through the same cycles repeatedly about once every 25,000 years. And actually, there's one gentleman who I think makes a pretty good case that actually over the past like 200,000 years, there's actually been about 5 or 6 different civilizations on this planet, and they have all respectively gone through their cataclysms that literally wiped their civilizations clean off the planet. So, oh, and by the way, we're kind of overdue for one of those cataclysms. In fact, actually, I think we're right about halfway through the 25,000 year cycle. So it was about 14,000 years ago when we had our last wipeout event. Anyway, so I don't know where the hell I'm going with today's commentary. This is actually going to be the difficult part of this market, because especially once we hit 1 month from now. Because unfortunately now, and this is the exact opposite to what I went through back. I mean, does anybody, I mean, the good part about it is most of you viewers, what did I tell all of you to do down here? And the cool part about it is, man, I bought a shit ton of crypto all through this. Actually, no, that wasn't even there, was it? I beg your pardon. It was actually, no, actually, no, it was here. Yeah, this is when I did the videos. Thank you. Glass Insights says it without potty mouth. Oh, excellent, Alexa. Also, don't need to use potty mouth. That's not exactly what I said, but close enough. In fact, we had a lady on the site at that point, and she's like, "Oh, why are you swearing so much? Say skirt instead of er." But, I mean, that was the time when you should have been loading up the boat. Kind of like, buying at Intel at like $20. When Intel goes to 40, 50, $60 a share, I'm going to be a net seller, not a buyer. Well, unfortunately, we're in that same kind of situation. I mean, this has been one hell of a bull run. You all know my plan with regard to if I'm ever going to actually sell my Bitcoins. And my plan says that the only reason why I would sell them is I get to the point where I can buy a house for my son, and he's special needs. He lives in institutional care right now. And if that was my final parting legacy of my life, to be able to set him up with a trust and a nice home that he can live in for the rest of his life, I think that's an aspirational goal. The irony of it all might be, though, the day that I do that and set it all up in place, that's my time to check out. I don't know. Interesting thing about life, and this is what, ironically enough, I love, I like to smoke. That's the irony of this. And of course, because these governments are completely bankrupt, this is a beautiful juxtaposition for them in my particular country, because the medical community, and it's interesting, I used to have a doctor. In fact, I had one doctor when I was a kid who used to smoke a pipe while you were in the doctor's office. So I had another doctor who was like, you have a couple smokes a day, or it's not the end of the world. So I think a lot of this sort of war on things like smoking it's just a beautiful excuse for governments to just tax the shit out of it, and they can just deflect it and say, well, it's a health concern. Whatever. Um, I'm not quite sure how the hell I got off on that tangent, but the point being here, it's very difficult for me to come in and talk to you all about being a Bitcoin bull once we get on the other side of this cycle pivot. It's coming. It's about a month or so away. And the interesting thing, like I said in the tweet or whatever the hell you're supposed to call it, I do find it fascinating how a lot of people have just gone back to just basically calling these things tweets. They've given up on the Xing, which is such a dumb word to use for this. But anyway, you all know. And by the way, I'm not going to pay Alan some sort of fee. Like, I'd never do that for a social media outlet. So either Alan bans me, or I'll just simply do these sort of one-liner kind of tweets. And if you want anything from me a little bit more in depth, I created this private social media channel where I can go. I mean, I could pay Alan his stupid ransom, but why not just do it here? I mean, it's the same thing. It's just another link on the internet. So if you would like write up to these longer posts that sort of explain in detail what I'm seeing in the market, and you can see a bunch of people like this write up I did. Actually, I'm surprised. These numbers are getting up there. There's a few hundred people now following. It's just substack.com. I think it's called Trading with Brian or something like that. Yeah, there it is. Substack.com/ at Trading with Brian. So feel free to join. It's free. And it's an alternative to Alan's ransom platform. And I do think that what Alan does here for people who don't want to pay his ransom is he literally farms out your account to the spam bots. So this this feed is just riddled with spam. And I don't think Alan gives a fuck. So understand that you're going to constantly see the nonsense bullshit idiots posting on my posts. And don't listen to any of them. It's, if they're touting some sort of idea, like it's funny, these YouTube videos, the bots have basically done the same thing there. And YouTube just doesn't give a shit. Oh, yeah, you can complain that it's spam, or you can block them or whatever, but it doesn't change anything. I don't think your YouTube gives a fuck. So, I don't even know how much longer I'll be using Twitter, but I would personally prefer just to completely get off of this. I see there's like 18,000 of you people over there, so there is some value in keeping this up and running, but I think I would prefer to wind this down. But it does work as just a nice simple advertising platform. So anyway, it's tough for me to come out and shill, oh yeah, these are great investments, because frankly speaking, I don't think anything in this space right now is really investment grade. I think you have to be careful, distinguish between whether you are an investor or whether you are a speculator, and be honest with yourself. This is the whole point of having a trading plan. If you are an investor, then you're drawing reload zones. You're waiting for this asset to go back to being unloved and nobody interested. You're waiting for that Beamish guy to go get your shit together. You're waiting for whatever the crisis is that causes the market to top to be flushed out. What a coincidence that SBF guy was thrown in the slammer right about the bottom here. And that applies, I think, even more so to like new issues. So For instance, I see a lot of this kind of price action in the marketplace. Frankly speaking, I don't think you can be an investor in an asset that looks like this. I think you have to wait for it to fill itself out and then do its technical correction. And then, like I said, with the sentiment in the space pretty negative, that's when you actually find out who's going to survive in this game, and you can make your investments right now. And especially with a chart that looks like that, I know a lot of people that will look at me and say, well, that's a bull flag. Okay, that's fine, but don't kid yourself. This is an investment grade. This is a trade. And once that bull flag completes, maybe they do want to face rip this thing up here. Well, for fuck's sakes, you better make damn sure you pay yourself for your efforts, because I could very easily see within a year, by the time we actually get back into crypto winter, uh, fall and winter are coming, folks. But once we get back into here, we're at 167s and 176s kind of idea. Excuse me, 1.618 to 1.786. Better be careful there. Well, that's when you find out whether these names are actually quote unquote investment grade. So I know, for instance, on the site, one of the principals, Fjord, came out last week. And when this thing first came out of the gate, he came into the lounge and just said, you probably ought to pay attention to this thing. It's a hot project, all that kind of stuff. And I said, okay, well, you know what? I'll trade this. And I just patiently waited for my reload zones. And I think I missed actually a buying window right here. It's plain as day. And, unfortunately, just because you know what to do, that doesn't necessarily mean you actually do it and act. So I think you could make the argument that I kind of dropped the ball there a bit. That's where you journal and you log and you try and make a commitment that if you are going to, trade your plan, reload zones, momentum divergences, W's and price, well, you better act. But I wouldn't call this an investment. I would call this a trade, especially off of like a 1 hour chart. So anyway, I did see the rally there and I was kicking myself. God damn son of a bitch, man, got to get in there. And this is an interesting event because this big pump, of course, was on this thing sort of graduating and now being listed on all of these other exchanges, which caused that big pump. And what was fascinating about this, what a piss off, but it's a trader's life. I actually threw my bid in, as you can see from this, and I said, "All right, fine, I'll go and take the trade." And not rocket science, pretty straightforward. There was a double bottom. There's reload zones. I'll throw my stink bid in at the double bottom, Wyckoff check, all that kind of talk. And look at what the market did to me. Came right down to mountain. In fact, Brandon there just teasing me. And then, no, screw you. We're out of here. And what's worse, and this is just a trader's life, right? This is a typical trader's life. Sometimes you win, sometimes it's not necessarily that you're winning or losing, but look at this. This is embarrassing. So there was my bid. I threw it in right against these candle body close level, right at the gap. And look at what they did to me, the jerks. They brought the market right down into the gap. And literally, I think they saw my buy order here, and I was a retail person. And keep in mind, this space is entirely unregulated. They can commit all the crimes they want in this space. I think that they were dumping this market, and you could see it right across the board. But they could also see my retail buy order just sitting here, and they were like, no, we are not going to give you a fill. Sorry. And they took it away. Isn't that brutal? The low on that candle there, 26.96. And my bid sitting there at 26.85. I missed the goddamn trade by 11 ticks. Anyway, that's a trader's life. But I'm not considering an image like that. And I don't even really think looking at things like on Dex Screener, I don't know whether this really makes sense to make investment decisions off of such a low time frame. I think you're kind of asking for trouble, but I do think that this is a trading environment. So if your plan stipulates that, I'm a trader, which means that I'm going to be trading setups and I'm going to be paying myself appropriately. It might be 2-to-1, might be 3-to-1, who knows? Might be selling halves on doubles if those double levels are realistic. I don't have a problem with that. But just understand the context of the market state. We're in a trading environment. We are not in an investment environment, in my humble opinion. And ironically enough, trades can go both ways. So at present, actually, we had from a trader's perspective, we had a potential bullish setup, a butt setup that fired on the breakout of the previous range, like against these highs. And it did look like we were trying to push higher here. Don't get me wrong. So you can see taking that setup. Well, we're going to buy the bar. We're going to buy 3 higher lows. Well, that trade got stopped out. Are you actually prepared to live a trader's life? You have to understand that, a lot of times you're going to get stopped for full loss and you have to be able to handle it. The market simply is telling you, no, your thesis about this being a bull market, that's incorrect. And you can't take any personal offense by it. You just simply have to trade the setup. And the interesting thing with this particular setup was the failure of the bullish breakout and then the subsequent break of previous structural support actually creates another setup. So this, and I don't know whether any of you follow, I don't really see him too much online anymore. And I don't even know what the guy's real name is. That's the one thing I don't like about this internet age and a lot of this social media is you never actually know who real people are. Hell, I don't even know if Noray's name is even Noray. His real name is probably like Bob or something. Or I suppose you're from Germany, so his real name's probably like Fritz. But that's the one thing I don't like about this space is all this sort of cloak and dagger shit that people go through. As the name says, I'm Brian Beamish. Damn glad to meet you. And I don't bullshit. There's no lying with me. There's no point in lying. I'm living on borrowed time anyway. Whatever time I have left on the planet, the only responsibility I have is to try and help you people and to help my poor son. That's it. There's nothing else here. There's no mystery. I'm an open book. I've been at this silly game for 30, 40 years. There are a few things that I've learned. I seem to know how to manage money, and my money has grown nicely. So I certainly don't have any complaints, but that's it. I'm just here to try and help you guys and girls and houseplants and try and help my boy as best as I can. Anyway, enough of the sad story. Point here is that as a trader, I have to be flexible enough to, the old expression is strong opinions loosely held. So in this case, I'm the butt. I'm a bull. Look at me go. Well, no, Mr. Beamish, the market doesn't quite agree with you. All right, fine. Okay, well, holy crap, that's a short setup there. I got to hit that. And so now we're playing the downside of the market. But that's a trader's life. Yeah, and it's funny watching the market play with me down here. I did actually originally have and this is the second take profit order on this trade. And if anything, this is also a really, really good example that if you do want to live this trader's life, you are going to have to live with the fact that you get stopped out on a fairly regular basis. But this is consider this like ankle biting. This is us fighting and jostling for position in the pits. And the irony of it all is that this position here produced a loss. This position here produced a gain. And this some game being 50% accurate, turns out that I'm just a scratch trader. But I've got this little treat on, because selling at 1.5 to 1 risk is on 2/3 of the position is basically the same as selling the entire position at 1 to 1 loss. So now I've got this thing over here with the stop at scratch. Now I've been moving it along as structure has come in. And so now this is the gravy part. This is the reward part of living that funny little trader's life. And keep in mind, this happens to be a bearish scenario. And frankly speaking, I have no idea how this is going to play out, but I don't care. I've already established that risk-free trade. So now it's just a question, okay, well, how big of the profit is this trade going to be? I don't know. Did have an interesting harmonic as well as a long-term trend line that we were coming up against. And as we were dumping into this, I had worked the buyback order a little bit lower than these lows. And they just missed me, jerks. That was like into the Friday retail close. Saturday, they rallied the market back up. Then Sunday, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll move my order up to the 2.618, a test of that railroad track low. And look at what happened here this morning here. This is bizarre. So if this was a futures contract, I could actually go to the exchange and say, what the fuck? Yeah, I can actually show you prints below my order. What the fuck is going on here? Hey, crypto? Who fucking knows? Good luck. Unregulated space. This is the space that you people love so much. Anyway, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I definitely like the idea. This is the solar eclipse here. So we have been waiting patiently for this event to finally happen. And so here we are. Dun, dun, dun. And this is an interesting development too, because one might argue that when the moving averages are pointing straight up like this, that's not really sustainable. If anything, what you ideally want to see for price to launch itself higher is you want to see that sort of turn in the moving averages, where especially a short-term moving average, where it goes from trending one direction to trending the other direction. So you can see the bear was clearly in control here, but you can also see the saucer bottom turn. Well, the bull completely came back into power here. So you can notice that just recently, man, we were kind of going like straight up. So if anything, this window here through this whole eclipse window, it's actually caused the moving averages to flatten out. And then with this recent price action here, we're actually starting to accelerate again. That's actually a pretty healthy sign, in my opinion. As I said before, is this investment grade up here? No. But I think that we need to finish these harmonic moves. I don't know whether this is a muted harmonic move. I think this speaks more to my funny little is this actually this isn't the chart. This one is. Wow, look at that hammer. That might even be a bottom, Well, we'll see. I think it was this one. Yeah. So I was actually pretty impressed with the fact that we didn't absolutely puke out here. Maybe that's what has to happen here. You can see the old comparison of previous cycle bottoms. This is what I was kind of thinking was going to happen here. But I suppose that puts us a little bit past that 4-year cycle date. So I was a bit surprised that we didn't get this final move down. But, I suppose descending wedges technically are bullish. History never repeats itself. It often rhymes, but it doesn't repeat itself exactly. So I guess the point here is once we're through this whole eclipse window, I was kind of questioning, what would our ultimate destination be? Were we going to do that sort of? And I was kind of thinking the market was kind of fractaling out here. You can't really see it with all this writing here, but this pattern here looked very, very similar to what we were doing in here. So was this going to be the resolution of this, just a replication of this range, but to a smaller degree to take us up into like mini me, full A, B, C, D objectives? I call it 135, 140. Or do we do a full-on fat bastard move and it's a symmetrical alt A, B, C, D, taking us all the way up into 1.618? I honestly, I don't know what our ultimate resolution is to this. I suppose nobody really does. Although what I do find interesting is, according to Alan's computer, and I don't know whether you can believe it or not, but theoretically, according to him and his computer, we are supposed to be here. So, oh boy. Okay. And as you all know, my plan is if we start accepting above, say, 250 Gs, well, I start going into sell mode. It doesn't seem to me that that's a realistic outcome. I don't know how that robot came up with that number, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. If it does, then Liam will be one happy camper in his nice big house. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is we're in the latter stages of a bull run. Usually Bitcoin does go parabolic into these end moves. I think some sort of blow off top is coming. And if anything, on that blow off top event, that's when I fully expect the public to come in uber bullish. And when that blow off top event happens, price goes zooming up. People will want for that price appreciation to continue. Brian's going to be barking that the cycle's over. We're living on borrowed time. You should have been banging out doubles. You should have been paying yourself on the rally. And the public is going to be saying, oh, no, 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 you're wrong, Beamish, because TTID. So this kind of stuff kind of writes itself. Did find it interesting in the shitcoin space, or altcoins, whatever we're supposed to call them. There's a funny little tells that something's not right under the surface. We were sitting there. At least I went into the trading view chat room here. You can even see somebody was replying to me here. And listening to these people, they're all like, 400 grand, here we go. This is it, all-time highs, we're all gonna get rich. Which is a tell unto itself. Something's not right with all this. But I thought it was really interesting. I pulled up the cripple chart and I went, wow, if we're in a bull market, you're not supposed to be seeing stuff like that. And then I looked at the momentum, and I don't know whether you're aware or not, but if I see two M's in a row in RSI, I start to get very, very interested. We have one M. Don't really have a divergence here in MACD. Willie's not really stupid yet, so I don't know whether this is this is cripple. I don't know whether this is an outright short right in here, but that's not exactly what you want to see if you're a bull. Like it might turn into like something like this, where we just got to work our way back down against these lows. I don't know, but that's not what you want to see if you're a bull. So that kind of left me scratching my head a little bit. Something's not right about this. And then also too, of course, Solana's been getting all the attention of late. And I pulled up the Solana chart. Actually, I'm pretty proud of myself because I actually took some profits yesterday on Solana in an unintended way. But I was handed a whole bunch of free coins by the good people at pump.fun. Thank you very much. Appreciate your generous donation. Although you can clearly see they are not happy with me whatsoever, the people that did make the donations. But anyway, you look at this Solana chart. Something doesn't look right about this. I mean, it's been a hell of a run. It was under $100. They took it all the way to 250. I mean, that's the kind of move that you should be proud of. I mean, like the Taco they're getting all excited about is 50% return. That would be like you bought Solana at $100 and you sold the whole damn thing at 150. And then you see that happen and you're like, oh, well, that's not so good. So if anybody, in fact, Adam, I seem to recall Adam said that he was stepping in on Solana around $100. He should be banging out doubles here and going over and letting his neighborhood know that he's a pretty damn fine trader. But coming in on the buy side there, ooh, gee whiz, that doesn't look very appealing to me. What are you crazy kids trying to get me to do here? So, in fact, interesting, had you traded this massive bought entry, move stop to scratch has just been hit. And quite often that's exactly what the bot does is as prices bumping up into levels that probably a lot of professional traders are going to start eyeballing as trade location to short, the bot just simply says, all right, we've hit the point, move your stop to scratch. And if this thing does puke out, you just walk away at scratch and wait for the next bus. But, so one might even argue that we're in trade location. And you look over at the indicators and you go, oh, shit, that's a divergence. Oh, Jesus, that's 1M. And is this thing rolling over, potentially making a little second M here? Willie stupidly overbought. Volume is trailed off here. Even that last push higher on volume there was lower than that peak. So maybe that Beamish is going to start barking about volume impetus signals. Something doesn't smell right about this, folks. This is not a buy in my eyes whatsoever. Be very, very careful here, folks. Now, I wouldn't be surprised, and this is a good opportunity to quiz you all. Let's see if anybody's listening. I think I got like 4 responses to my last question. What is the level that we should all be watching like a hawk for at any given point in time in any bull or bear run? The market should trade back to that level. You think it's a mini me, Aboria? Yeah, you're not impressed with the fat bastard call. And it's interesting. I just don't know where we go, right? That's this, right? That's mini me, and that's fat bastard way up there. But the question was, at any given point in time, what should we expect that can happen at any given point in time? And I think Jim and Liz, you're heading in the right direction. Just a little miles under your tires. In fact, we even created a fun little template because one of our OGs from previous cycles, he actually fell in love with this particular zone as a sort of buying zone within a trending market state. We affectionately call it TBG's pump chaser zone, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to call it now? I used to call it this gentleman's pump chaser, and TBG got all angry at me because I think he was thinking I was stealing his ideas or something like that. Anyway, but the point is at any given point in time, and this goes all the way back to an old gnarly NYSE floor broker that I used to trade with a million years ago, and I don't even hear about him now. He's probably retired. Good old Ray Burchett. A guy on the site used to always call him Ray Barbecue. That old 38.2 retracements. So it's fast at any given, and if you don't know this, take a screenshot of this and just let's see what happens. But in your journals, what did I learn today? What did I see? Is any of this crap this guy's spouting out of any value? Just maybe write down somewhere at any given point in time, any and all traders should expect a 38.2 retracement of whatever the previous trading range is. This can happen at any time, anywhere, and you just have to expect it as a trader. And unfortunately, for the kids that chase up markets and that come in and buy up here, it's usually that 38.2 correction that actually flushes them out. It doesn't necessarily mean that the bull trend is over, because you can clearly see if all we do is higher highs and higher lows, well, if we came down to 38.2, that looks pretty symmetrical to me. It's not really like it's rocket science, but it's usually some sort of, flash event right in here that actually breaks all the noobs' hearts, because they're coming in and they're buying when Willie is stupidly overbought. And that, my friends, is not a good idea. That's exactly why I built this indicator. This indicator here is saying, do not buy this. You are stupid if you come in here and buy this asset here. Sorry. And, we literally call this market state of this indicator it being stupid. And keep in mind, the public usually is pretty stupid when it comes to spending money in the marketplace. They might be doctors, lawyers, rocket scientists, but when it comes to investing, they can be stupid as stupid gets. And I've seen it literally 30 years, my career. Nothing changes ever. Because really, this is, let's call a spade a spade. Does the medical community actually even understand how this human body works? I would actually make an unequivocal argument. They haven't got a fucking clue how these human bodies actually work. They're great at labeling things, and they're great at saying, oh, well, that happened in that guy, so odds are maybe it's the same thing that's happening in that guy or girl or houseplant or whatever. But I would make the argument that none of us really know how this human body even works. And I got 25 years of on the ground experience and actual medical testimony attesting to the fact that none of these people really know what the fuck is going on with my son. And they just give it this label. Oh, it's autistic spectrum disorder. Well, how big is the spectrum? Well, how wide can you put your hands? And they just dump anybody that they don't really understand what's going on with them into this diagnosis. Problem solved. No problems ever solved. And of course, they cubbyhole these people. Oh, we'll give them all the social assistance they need and all the medical and all. But the problem is never even addressed. So, do you really think that these human beings really even understand how they work themselves? No. But when it comes to things like human emotions, write this down. There are two words that drive all sort of non-professionals in this space. Two words and two words only. And anybody coming in on the buy side here, they are basically feeding into that one word. Very good, TBG. And unfortunately, to actually be a good asset manager and a good money manager, you actually have to think of the other word more importantly. No, not those two words. Sorry. All students of mine know those two words. Maybe one of my students can help our Borea crypto with that. Two words drive all human financial decisions. All right. So anyway, point of the matter here is things are looking a little bit long in the tooth, looking a little tough here. Terrible place to be a buyer. And this cycle is running, in my opinion, on borrowed time. Uh, Not quite at the end just yet. And I actually think, and this was the commentary I made today, I do believe that we are going through that sort of post FOMC solar eclipse sort of reckoning, sort of cycling. And I did find it interesting that on the weekly chart, we actually did confirm a 3-bar bullish fractal here, which does to a certain degree negate the bearish fractal that actually was registered, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago as we headed into this eclipse window. So I think that's a positive anytime you actually confirm fractals. But we all need to appreciate that the fractal alone, its size is pretty damn big. All right, so top of the fractal, bottom of the fractal. What is that? $9,000 fractal. Ay, caramba. Holy moly. And you can see where the 13 EMA is. That's my sort of what is this market sort of short-term support. Interesting how we lost 13 EMA, then quickly came back and recaptured it. We're now going to close 2 consecutive bars above the 13 EMA. I would call that successfully recaptured. I very rarely do I ever see that the 13 EMA puts in this kind of structure and then the market goes and actually just breaks down. That's actually a pretty bullish reading. And the interesting thing about this is as long as this fast moving average is above this slow moving average, I would actually consider this market on the weekly basis. I would consider this in a bullish market state. So all the green lights are for the bull to resume. We did have a warning sign from momentum itself, things like RSI studies, that Houston, we have a problem. Oh, where the hell did that go? So the writing's on the walls. And I did like RSI studies recently that showed that we're nowhere near to breaking out. This is the breakout. This is your face rip move here. And RSI actually has very well established bearish structure working. That's not a good sign. So, there is the cycle peak. I could easily see RSI work its way back up against these highs. And you have Bitcoin just go absolutely parabolic apeshit through this. But until this Bitcoin RSI actually closes and prints above this level, momentum is actually pointing down right now. And that's usually what happens at the end of these damn moves. Remember, there's one guy last cycle who actually publicly came out and said, don't worry about what RSI is telling you. Yeah, there's a divergence, but just go and buy Bitcoin and you'll get rich. And it's like, oh, come on. So the writing's on the walls, folks. It's there. Be interesting to see. This setup works pretty well trading futures. So ironically enough, from a weekly basis, I wouldn't fault some old gnarly old timer in the crypto space that actually took shorts off a year and are going to risk to new highs. It's a perfectly valid setup. What I would say though is if we do start seeing W's start coming in on these momentum indicators on the weekly chart, then it will negate that signal. So, we just might find over the next couple of weeks, boom, 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 income W's here, and that signal is negated and off we go. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Only time will tell. But I did find it interesting that number one, the moving averages. Also, too, this is a cool thing, but I'm running out of time here. So, but I did want to leave off with this because this is super cool. If you're a fan of volume profile, That's this study over here. Um, one application of this study is to follow value. And if you find value is actually moving up as we're trading away here, then what it means is more and more participants are coming into the market. That's a good sign. And if you see value actually shifting and rising, then it means that we're probably heading higher because more buyers are coming in. So it was interesting when I did that study today, and I put on things like value high. Actually, that's not what I wanted. Developing value. That's what I wanted there. And we'll change it to a color you can see. You tell me, is value rising here? Can you see that yellow line? Might be tough to see that. And I think this is pretty important. Again, I like the idea of the market moving higher here. I don't know how oh, there we go. There we go. Is value, the yellow line, is it rising? Looks to me like it is. So I thought that's another anecdote along with the moving averages and the fractal. There's anecdotal evidence that this market wants to go higher, and frankly speaking, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. But the problem here is that this is the end of the move, not the beginning of the move. I hope you can all appreciate that. Anyway, hopefully you got some value out of all that. I talked a little bit about shitcoins. I'm not overly impressed with what I'm seeing. You know what I'm also seeing too, though, is I'm seeing individual stories start to perk up. And I even put out a fun little tweet about I love buying beat up names. So, like I said, I turned bullish on Intel like a year or so ago, just because it was looking so compelling. So, as a testament to that kind of thinking, oh, this was an interesting looking chart. So that to me actually looks like it's starting to actually become an investment grade asset because look how far it's fallen. Look at that, eh? Holy moly. So one of TRI's principal stewards from Netherlands, and I think these guys are in Europe. But that's starting to look pretty damn compelling, eh? I mean, I'm not looking for new highs, but remember I told you, Mr. Gann and his funny little 50% rule. This is just from back in 2024. That's not that long ago. And there's Ray Burchett. I mean, you see the price right here. It's what 1 something, and that's 0.89. Jesus, you can make a fortune on that. And it's interesting because this is a harmonic pattern that I like, the bat. And it suggests that, we're probably starting to get down into attractive trade location. And interesting too, you can see one W in RSI. How many W's in a row do I want to see to get that buy signal? You can see how MACD is actually diving out. MACD is trying to go positive here. So you can clearly see lower lows in price, but higher lows in MACD. Oh, Willie's nice and stupid. So if you are a seller here, you're pretty stupid. So, and look at all the activity coming in here. Something's going on. So I found that pretty compelling. I wanted to go buy some, but unfortunately, I don't have an account where I can actually buy them. But I'd be happy to go nanny nibbling on something like that. And then, of course, considering we have the indicators all basically pointing in the positive direction, you get a nice W in here. And gee, that to me looks like a half decent trade. I wouldn't be surprised, though, to be perfectly blunt, that we have to see one more leg lower to get down to these levels. But if a W did come in here, I wouldn't fault anybody for pulling the trigger. So there's lots of these kind of ideas floating out there. But at the same time, too, this isn't the classic crypto story. right? There's no proof of work here. This is all purely, I mean, I would make the argument the token itself is worthless. It's just purely a sentiment proxy. And that's what I think this space is going to evolve into, especially as we move through this respective greed cycle. That I think Wall Street is going to use crypto to dramatically expand profit margins. And I even heard guys like Tom Lee say that he actually expects by time crypto is fully integrated into the banking system that the financial stocks will actually look exactly like you see all of these tech stocks. And financial stocks, to a certain degree, might actually turn into quasi tech proxies. And you might find that some tech companies like Apple and Google and stuff actually sort of blur the line to financial stocks. I could very easily see that kind of scenario. But at the same time, too, you have to respect that this is no longer the classic crypto story that you came into and invest in, 10 years ago when you were buying value and crypto was a value proposition. Those days are, if you do want, and interestingly enough, to finish that thought, it is fascinating because I don't think quote unquote value is anywhere near here on Bitcoin. But isn't it interesting that if we zoom out and we look at the 4-year average for the price of Bitcoin, I definitely could see after this next halving event that Bitcoin's value will be around 50 G's. I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, so if you're a value player, you can't even look at this stuff from investment perspective. If, however, you're a growth player and you have some sort of growth story here, if you found out that insiders were getting heavily long this, if you found out that this was somehow tied towards some sort of earning stream, and for instance, there's a project I'm interested in right now that they've actually developed a video game that the coin will be directly integrated into the video game. So if the video game does well, obviously the demand for the coin, because you have to buy all the stuff in the video game's coin. And that's exactly what I want to do with this thing. Like I might argue right now, there is absolutely no value to this little piece of crap that I floated there a month or so ago, taking advantage of the pump.fun people. Um, and I will just be accumulating. I'm up to about maybe about a 6 or 7% stake in this thing so far. I'm just going to be slowly accumulating away until I have a controlling position in the coin. But there's no value to this whatsoever. My plan is to, with at some point down the road, and anybody watching this video, if you do know how to do this, please get in touch with me. But when I do take controlling position of this, I want to tie it directly to some sort of crypto wallet. I don't think it's going to be off of these guys. It's probably be more of like this kind of thing. But I want to tie the value of this coin to a wallet and then just basically do what I've done for years and years and years. And that is this nonsense. And keep in mind, I used to do this as a professional broker, prop trader. I mean, I was a commodities broker, options broker. I mean, I've played this game forever. This just happened to be one particular cycle. But every 4 years, you can do this. It's not rocket science. The irony of it all is executing it is rocket science to the public. Anyway. All right. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Now, I thought, and this is why I put this image in the actual write up. This is yet another little piece of anecdotal information. You can see stocks are in the yellow line. Bitcoin is in the teal line or whatever we want to call that. I've got stocks and I've got Bitcoin on them when they're trending in particular directions. And of course, you can see the 4-year cycle peaks in Bitcoin there, there, maybe. Who knows? We'll see. I suppose there's another one over here somewhere. And interestingly enough, you can see how liquidity drained out of the system. Bitcoin cycle peak, and then the next cycle trough. I haven't done it for that particular cycle. I just did it for this. You can see they're draining liquidity out of the system right at the point where the Bitcoin cycle peaks. And what a big surprise, Bitcoin tanks and hits its 786 level. Interesting how stocks disconnected from this study, but ultimately had to bottom when Bitcoin bottomed. That's an interesting study. I'd also say, too, and this needs further study investigation, but I do believe that the banking cartel artificially manipulated liquidity in the system through this window. Because I think actually Bitcoin works really, really well as sort of a barometer for liquidity peaks and liquidity troughs. And this blue line is that liquidity. If you can understand all of this, then you understand what this is. But in essence, this is like the Federal Reserve's, U.S. Fed's reserves minus the Treasuries pile and the repos. So the Treasury itself can artificially manipulate the curve. And interestingly enough, in our news article, our little newsletter here this week, we made reference to Mr. Hayes saying that, well, in his belief, if the U.S. Treasury comes out and starts juicing the system, then you'll see your new bull market will kick in. And so, whoops, where did that go? That was this image. And it's interesting that he made direct reference to 850 trillion or billion or whatever the fuck numbers they're using here. And you can kind of see if the Treasury really does ramp this up, then ironically enough, you're actually going to see that TRE, I think that's Treasury, that number will rise. But what's interesting is at the very same time, you can see that the banking system, they have completely collapsed the repo market. So I do think that these two are actually offsetting each other. The bottom line here is this dark blue line on the left. This is basically the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. And you can see how we did go through a consolidation period and people were kind of feeling positive that maybe the hyperinflation phase is over. And then they went, nope, fuck you, more hyperinflation. And sure enough, Bitcoin took off again. And notice like last cycle, and I was quite surprised at how well pronounced this was right in here. You can see, and it's awfully hard to see here, but you can see the writing's on the walls. This isn't like some sort of secret. You can see they've done exactly the same thing that they did here. And keep in mind, this was the last crypto cycle peak every 4 years. Is history repeating itself? Seems like it. As smart, shrewd investors, should we respect the message that we are being told here? M's are bearish, W's are bullish. It's interesting, through that last potential top, they never did come in and actually break the market down. You see that they had the green light. Here's the little M. All right, here we go. Psych. And they took it away. But this time, okay, there's the M. All right, here we go. Boom, broken. Here's the M. Here we go. Oh, psych. Here comes the M. All right, here we go. Boom, broken. And boom, down we go. So the market is speaking to us, people. The question is, do you want to respect the market's message? Clearly, somebody in the banking system does not want this economy to keep expanding. And it makes perfect sense to me, because I think the banksters, they have their own agenda, great resets, all that kind of fun stuff. They've done their great resets. That's been completed now. So now what they have to do is they have to throw every fucking hurdle they possibly can at the politicians, at society, anything they can to slow this thing down so that they can get control of this monster again. That's my hunch of what's going on. And as you can see, 22, 23, Bitcoin cycles. Notice as soon as we went into that 1618, 1786 window, all of a sudden the banksters start to liquidify. I don't know whether that's a word or not, but start to add reserves to the system. And really, one could argue this entire world's basically bankrupt. Everybody lives on borrowed money. Nobody talks about actually buying a house. It's just a question of how big your mortgage is. But the point here is that this is the environment where the banksters say, you want liquidity? Great. You want to go borrow money? We'll lower rates, we reduce credit quality, all that kind of stuff. Get out there, spend money. And that, my friends, is the exact opposite message. As you can see from Bitcoin, we might just pause and go sideways here for a little bit and then work our way down. I don't know. My business is not to be in the business of predicting what's going to happen. My business is simply acknowledge what I see in the market, what is the market's message, and then hunt setups. And ironically enough, you can even see in the stock market, right? This is the stock market I'm showing you. I think it is. No, that's even worse. That's Bitcoin. On a clothesline basis, Bitcoin actually has those M's working. Remember, I showed you that previous sell signal that's actually working right now. So we're not at that 4-year cycle pivot, but there's a hell of a lot of anecdotal evidence that's telling you people slow down. And for God's sakes, don't get sucked into the euphoria, because the euphoria, and this is how I started the broadcast, I should probably finish it at this. It's the euphoria, the TTID talk, the stand in front of a whiteboard and wear some sort of fancy, high-priced garments, which make you look rich and smart, and just circle assets and say, well, this is the future. This is what you should buy. And ironically enough, and even Jerry even said it. Somebody in the press conference on Wednesday said, well, are you concerned about assets, reserves in the system right now? And Jerry even himself said, and it should have been a warning to all of you, he said the system is more than adequately supplied with reserves. In fact, maybe even a little bit oversupplied with reserves. And what a surprise. Big old fat M's come in on that reserves on that event. So Jerry is even telling the market, anybody who is listening to him, Jerry is explicitly telling the market, we're not going to be giving you any more reserves to work with. If anything, maybe we need to be taking the punch bowl away. That's what that image is saying. And ironically enough, if you watch Jerry's press conference there on Friday, he was not a friendly, happy banker. He was a bit bitter. He was very short and curt with his responses. He wouldn't even address anything that came out of Taco's mouth. And now Taco, and I don't know how the fuck this happened, but Taco now has all of a sudden decided that it turns out that the Fed has 3 mandates. And one of the mandates is that the Fed must keep long-term interest rates down. What? Where the fuck did that come from? More of Taco trying to manipulate the economy to his own personal gains. And sadly, I think that this is going to blow up in Taco's face. Anyway, I don't think we see the blow up this year, but my hunch is next summer, we are going to see a crisis. Who knows what the hell it is, but they're probably cooking the books, getting everything in place now. I think it will be directly tied to this image. and it will cause the market itself to probably top. And unfortunately, because these Western societies don't want to go bankrupt and default, and it could come from a couple of different directions. There is a case in the working its way through the courts right now, where the Supreme Court must now actually affirm Mr. Trump's ability to actually levy these tariffs. So the Supreme Court's actually going to have to set precedent to actually endorse what Taco is doing with regard to tariffs. And I can tell you, especially from personal experience, courts never like to set precedents. And I think that's half the reason why the lower court went, whoa, 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 whoa. These tariffs are illegal. You can't do this. And then instantly Taco says, all right, Supreme Court, so maybe that's the big showdown. But we all know, and anybody who's been watching my videos, you all know exactly what I'm expecting. About the middle of next summer, there is going to be some sort of horrendous shock to the system. And the irony of it all is the shock will enable the banksters to regain control, right? All the public's going to be screaming, "I'll do anything to save capitalism." And they can come in and, of course, re-exert control of the market, and that's when they'll turn the spigots back on. I also think, too, and it's kind of a depressing thought, that actually the foundation of our Western civilization and this whole idea of democracy, and democracy's been dramatically altered and edited over the past 5-10 years. I definitely think that we could definitely be at a watershed moment where our entire civilization might actually just slip into autocratic rule. There is definitely a very high probability of that floating out there. So be forewarned. And I do find it interesting that this study right here is definitely screaming there are problems brewing. Anyway, probably falls on deaf ears. But I guess the point of all of this is if you want to have fun in the market, okay, great. I mean, hell, I strapped on a bull call spread in this thing just last week because I like the chart and I like the numbers. It's a spread, which by definition means that it's a trade. But I'm not like investing. In fact, I'm just actually figuring out when I divest out of all of these names that I'm long. I'm long a ton of Hut. I'm long a ton of Novograds. I'm now long this Sharp. I'm long a ton of Coinbase. Never did get into that MicroStrategies, although I did mention that it looked like a double bottom was coming in last week. And sure enough, the damn bottom came in. The only problem is that the spreads didn't really add up for a trade to be done. So I had to curtail my enthusiasm there. I do think that this space is moving higher here, but this, in my opinion, folks, I'm sorry, this is not investment grade. Sucks, but anyway, it is what it is. And that's just my opinion. Once we get on to the other cycle, the other side of this October 4-year cycle event, at that point, I won't be buying any more crypto other than this piece of shit. But I'm just going to be buying it with the coins that these people gave me. Thank you very much, Pump.Fun. I appreciate it. And actually, for whatever it's worth, I moved a huge chunk of those coins off the exchange onto cold storage wallet. And as a result, if you go on the that Pump.Fun, you see that my percentage ownership on the site is greatly reduced. But I'll just keep moving those coins off of that site because, frankly speaking, I wouldn't be surprised if that site disappeared in the not too distant future. You can see there's the writing's on the walls. Anyway, we'll see how all that goes. So once we get on the other side of this cycle pivot event window, I won't be buying any more crypto. It sucks. It's just the way it is. So just be well aware of that. And if we do pump here, I will be selling my bags into whatever kind of rally we see in this market over the next, I guess, few months. And, it just is what it is. That's the way the market goes. Interesting to see little names perking up here. So not everything's going down, but you can see it's kind of a bit of a pall in the market. And interestingly enough, we started off the broadcast with a look at our newsletter, which of course has the breadth indicator on it. And the breadth indicator right now is not screaming bull. Breadth indicator right now is kind of saying, if you're a bull, you better just cool your jets and wait for all this crap to settle out. And frankly speaking, I think that's a good idea. So we'll see how all this goes. Of course, now never find the damn chart when I want to show you. Where is that darn newsletter? Is it over here? Oh, well, where is the site? There it is. There you go. There's the breadth indicator. That is not an investment grade breadth indicator reading. That's got trouble written all over it. And also interesting too to see stock market, not really overly happy here right now either. Yeah. And then finish it off. I don't know. Did the traders back in January, were they concerned? Maybe we might see trouble in the not too distant future. Well, I think you all know the answer to that. The only problem is, where is the damn chart? Is it this one? No. Maybe it's this one. It's over here. Where's my SPY? Oh, there it is. Boosh. I don't know what the hell's coming, folks. This is going to be a wild month ahead of us. So strap on and don't chase. For God's sakes, don't chase. Buy your W's. Okay. Was there any questions in the Q&A document, Chris? I got to wind this up here. In fact, I got to get out of here now. Tell you what, I'll circle back around and look at the Q&A document through tomorrow's session. I really do have to get out of here for Liam. I have to go a little bit early just to make sure there's air in my tires. So I think we're going to leave it at that. Hopefully this was a cautionary warning to all of you. If the market does decide to rally over the next month or two, great, wonderful. We'll take profits into that rally. I'm not buying a hell of a lot more. And anything that I am buying, strictly a trade. So little old ladies, with that kind of image in the stock market, probably little old ladies are on pause. And definitely in the crypto market with regard to things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and even Cripple and all that. I mean, I might entertain nibbling on this kind of little name here for fun. But, especially with things like, well, you know what? I've already said all this. You know that the message. Very difficult for me to justify coming in and investing in an asset that's done that. So how close are we to the end? I think we're pretty close, but I could very easily see this go on, maybe even into the calendar year end. That really wouldn't surprise me. So just act appropriately. Thank you very much for your best wishes for Liam and I on the road today. Appreciate it, everybody. We'll see everybody on the site, I suppose, for behind the paywall Monday broadcast. But just remember what your number one job is in here. I don't think anybody at TRI needs to be a hero and call bottoms and call tops. And if anything, we've all been working away for the past few years, accumulating. Well, I think we're coming into pay windows now, which means that I'm a net seller, not a net buyer. All right, everybody. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you very much for your best wishes for Liam and I on the road. Slow and steady wins the race. PMA for the win. Remember what your number one job is. Don't take no with nickels. The only little Brian said you is. Bye.
Recording stopped.